Caitlin Clark's absence next season might look like a player decision, but the truth runs much deeper, right into the heart of the Indiana Fever's front office. When Stephanie White confirmed both Clark and Sophie Cunningham wouldn't return, it was the public face of a deeper collapse fueled by one viral mistake. The Fever's protected roster plan, meant to remain private, accidentally hit social media, exposing their entire draft strategy to the world.
If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe.
Within hours, the Golden State Valkyries had everything they needed to exploit those gaps, while fans tore into management for leaving young talent like Grace Berger vulnerable. Behind closed doors, players questioned loyalty, trust evaporated, and the Fever's locker room reportedly fractured under the pressure. This is no longer just a team error, it's a league crisis. The WNBA, in its most pivotal expansion year, now faces scrutiny over its digital safeguards, public credibility, and player morale. Clark and Cunningham's departures symbolize more than lost talent. They're the result of a system that failed to protect both its data and its players. This video reveals how one accidental post may have rewritten the future of the WNBA, exposing the fragile line between modern technology, human error, and the high-stakes business of professional basketball. Stephanie White just confirmed it. Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham will not be returning next season. And with that, the entire league just hit DEFCON 1. This isn't a minor adjustment. This isn't just another roster shuffle ahead of the WNBA's long-anticipated expansion draft. This is an operational disaster, unfolding in real time, and one that started with a social media mistake that should have never made it out of the draft queue. The Indiana Fever's internal protected roster list, one of the most sensitive documents of the offseason, was accidentally posted online, just days before the expansion protection deadline. Just after Clark's historic, record-shattering draft coverage had boosted the Fever's visibility to a global level. The timing couldn't have been worse. And the content? Even worse than the timing, because it revealed a protected list that did not include Caitlin Clark, or Sophie Cunningham, or Grace Berger. Let's just stop there. Caitlin Clark was the single most high-profile player in the league last year. She brought millions of new viewers to the WNBA. Her draft was one of the most watched women's sports events ever. Brands lined up. Merchandise sold out. Her games became events. And now, after all that momentum, she's being left out in the cold for an expansion team to scoop up. By accident? Not exactly. Stephanie White confirmed it wasn't a mistake. She confirmed that Clark and Cunningham were deliberately left off the protected list, which means the post wasn't the issue. The decision was. Let that settle in. The Indiana Fever knew who they were protecting. They knew who they were leaving vulnerable. And they still chose not to shield the biggest star in the league. Fans went ballistic. The comment sections, the forums, even the national news cycle lit up like a scoreboard. Because this wasn't just bad strategy, it was incomprehensible. Cunningham's exclusion raised eyebrows. Grace Berger's omission shocked scouts. But Clark? That lit the whole league on fire. And now, it's not just about the Fever's future. It's about the integrity of the entire expansion process. Because the leak didn't just reveal Indiana's roster plans. It gave the Golden State Valkyries a fully detailed look into every weak point they could exploit. The Valkyries were already positioned to enter the WNBA with a tech-fueled front office and major financial backing. They weren't coming in slow. They were prepared to make an impact. And now, thanks to Indiana's leak, they've got what amounts to a cheat sheet. Names, data, vulnerabilities, all ahead of the most important selection window in their formation. It's hard to overstate just how damaging this is. The Valkyries now have the opportunity to acquire players who were never meant to be up for grabs. They can cherry-pick unprotected names with the kind of insight that most expansion franchises only dream of. And the fact that this happened because of a social media post, it's the kind of thing that would get someone fired in any other league. But here it's just chaos. Let's talk about Grace Berger. The fact that she wasn't on the protected list drew immediate scrutiny from analysts. She's widely viewed as a rising star, a future court general with flashes of brilliance already being compared to veterans like Courtney Vandersloot. She's not just a player with potential, she's a foundational asset. And yet exposed. The logic behind these decisions doesn't add up. Even factoring in contractual obligations, salary cap strategy, and off-court considerations, the risk of losing three key players, one of them being the biggest draw in the league, isn't strategic. It's reckless, and the ripple effects are starting to show. The Fever's market value, which had surged 32% on the back of Clark's rookie performance, is now plummeting. Ticket renewals have slowed. Fan engagement has collapsed. Local businesses, many of which align their advertising and merchandise partnerships with Clark's presence, are reportedly reconsidering their deals. And the media fallout hasn't even peaked yet. This was the expansion draft that was supposed to elevate the WNBA into a new tier. The Valkyries' entry into the league marked a pivotal moment, financially, strategically, and globally. Instead, the focus is now on Indiana's complete lack of crisis control and the league's dangerously soft digital protocols. The WNBA is now staring down a PR disaster and a competitive imbalance, all of which could have been prevented with stronger security measures. Because while teams scramble to implement multi-level post-approvals and internal lockdowns, the Valkyries are calmly preparing to walk away with the biggest off-season haul the league has ever seen. It doesn't help that the psychological impact on players is already becoming visible. Reports are coming in about closed-door meetings, player agents entering crisis mode, and a visible shift in locker room dynamics. Being publicly unprotected doesn't just change your future, it changes how you view your team. Some players found out with the rest of us on social media. That's not just a management issue. That's a respect issue. The kind of thing that breaks trust. The kind of thing that pushes players toward international contracts or early retirement. And the Valkyries? They're not just watching. They're actively targeting. Sources say they've already initiated internal evaluations on Clark, Bergerer, and Cunningham, along with at least two more players from other franchises affected by the leak. They got the resources. They've got the tech. And now, they've got the leverage. The expansion draft was never supposed to be this messy. It was supposed to be a turning point for the league, growth, investment, progress. Instead, it's become a case study in how one slip-up can destabilize an entire season's worth of planning, damage a team's identity, and threaten league-wide trust between players and management. Even international teams are circling. Clubs in Europe are reportedly reaching out to agents representing the unprotected Fever players, especially those facing uncertain contracts. What started as a domestic roster misfire could now spark international player movement, a new headache the WNBA didn't see coming. And as for the fans, they're not moving on. They're mobilizing. Petitions are being circulated. Season ticket holders are demanding statements from management. The pressure is mounting, and unless the Fever reverse course, or the league steps in, this scandal could stick to the franchise for seasons to come. Stephanie White's confirmation that Clark and Cunningham are gone wasn't just a roster update. It was the moment the fan base realized no one at the top had a grip on the situation. The Valkyries are on the verge of pulling off one of the most lopsided acquisitions in league history. Not because they out-strategized anyone, but because they got handed a leak and made the most of it. Drop a comment below. Should the league intervene before the Valkyries claim these players? Can the Fever recover from this self-inflicted crisis? And what does this mean for how the WNBA handles expansion, security, and transparency going forward? Make sure you subscribe because this story is far from over, and the expansion draft might just reshape the league in ways no one expected. At this point, you'd think the Indiana Fever would be in damage control mode. But no statement from the front office, no press conference, no sense of urgency to clean up what's quickly becoming one of the most preventable catastrophes in league history. Instead, the only clarity fans have received came directly from Stephanie White, confirming what the leaked list already told us. Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham are not returning next season. Full stop. And the silence? It's loud, because this isn't just about bad roster math. This is about trust between players and management, between teams and fans, between the league and its future. You can't talk about growing the game and investing in the next generation, while throwing your most marketable player into the expansion draft like an afterthought. Caitlin Clark was the story. Her rookie season elevated the Fever from a forgettable mid-table team to a nightly headline. She drew millions of new eyeballs to the league. She sold out games in cities that hadn't seen a full arena in years. She made casual fans care. And now, thanks to a social media leak and a string of baffling decisions, she's likely headed to Golden State, hand-delivered by the same team that should have been building around her. The Valkyries couldn't have scripted it better. They were already set to enter the league with unprecedented resources, analytics-driven operations, and Silicon Valley money behind them. But now, they've got the Fever's playbook. Literally, the league-protected list didn't just reveal Indiana's miscalculations. It exposed internal assessments of value, chemistry, and long-term planning. The Valkyries now know who Indiana thought was essential and who they were willing to gamble with. Clark, Bergerer, Cunningham, all unprotected, all gettable. And let's not downplay that. Grace Bergerer wasn't just left off the list. She was abandoned by a franchise that had previously hyped her as their next breakout. Analysts have compared her vision and composure to Courtney Vandersloot. She was being positioned as the backcourt co-pilot for Clark. Now, she's likely gone too. The Golden State Valkyries are quietly making moves behind the scenes, already preparing offers, packages, and pitches. They don't need to guess who's available. Indiana told them. And the Fever? They're acting like this is all part of the plan. A long-term rebuild. A shift in strategic priorities. Please, there's no rebuilding from losing the player who is your rebuild. There's no strategy in letting your franchise face walk out the door because you couldn't get your digital security under control. And the consequences are stacking up fast. Local fan groups are organizing protests. A petition demanding accountability from team ownership already has over 80,000 signatures and counting. Season ticket cancellations are climbing by the day. One local sponsor has already pulled out of its renewal agreement, citing uncertainty around player retention. And it's not just local. National networks are reportedly reconsidering coverage packages involving the Fever next season. One insider even hinted that certain nationally televised games may be pulled if Clark ends up in Golden State. Think about that. One digital error, one unprotected list, and the Fever may have cost themselves TV revenue, ticket sales, player morale, and a once-in-a-decade talent. But sure, strategic. And let's not pretend this is just a team-level issue. The WNBA itself is now on the hook. Because expansion was supposed to be a celebration. The Valkyries were meant to represent growth, innovation, and a step into a more financially sustainable league future. Instead, the rollout has become a crisis of confidence. Other teams are tightening the reins on internal processes. Multiple franchises are reportedly reviewing social media protocols with outside consultants. League offices are scrambling to coordinate with team PR departments to control the narrative. But the narrative has already written itself. When players found out about their unprotected status through Twitter, not through their agents, not through a call from the GM, but from a leak, that's not just mishandled. That's disrespect, and the effects are personal. Sources say players have been holding private group chats, excluding management, to figure out what's going on. Trust is at an all-time low, and with international offers already floating around, there's a growing concern that this offseason won't just lead to a Valkyries coup. It could result in an international exodus. Some players have reportedly expressed interest in EuroLeague contracts. Others are exploring temporary overseas deals as a wait-and-see move, not willing to commit to a league that just told them they're expendable. And that's what all boils down to. This leak didn't just expose players. It exposed priorities. It told the league, the fans, the media, and, most importantly, the athletes themselves exactly where they stand in the eyes of their franchises. If Clark can be treated like a chess piece, anyone can. And yes, there are still technical possibilities. Trades can be negotiated. Protections can be reallocated. But make no mistake, this isn't just about the pieces on a roster anymore. This is about how the players were treated. Publicly. Carelessly. As if no one would notice. Well, they did. The Golden State Valkyries are likely walking into next season with 3 high-value assets they had no business being able to draft. And the Indiana Fever, once the hottest team in the league in terms of media buzz, are now looking like a franchise in freefall. There are 2 directions the WNBA can go from here. It can act like this is an isolated incident and move on, pretending that the expansion draft is going exactly as planned. Or it can confront the obvious, that the rollout of expansion has been riddled with preventable errors, and that stronger policies need to be enforced immediately, from digital protocols to player communication to crisis response. Because if this becomes the new standard, if star players can be lost to expansion because someone pressed post too early, then no one is safe. Every team, every player, every fan should be watching this unfold with wide eyes. Because it's more than a leak. It's a mirror. And a reflection? It's not pretty. It's wild how fast everything changed. Less than a month ago, the Indiana Fever were riding high. Caitlin Clark had just wrapped her rookie season with record-breaking viewership, jersey sales through the roof, and a fan base more energized than ever. She wasn't just the future of the franchise, she was the franchise. Indiana, for the first time in years, had national relevance. People cared. Now, the same front office that benefited from Clark's meteoric rise just handed her over on a platter. Not in a trade, not in free agency, but through a botched roster protection plan, leaked through a poorly secured social media post that somehow made it online before anyone caught it. Let that sink in. A player who transformed the WNBA's visibility and helped redefine what star power looks like in women's sports is now being given up for free. And not just her. Sophie Cunningham and Grace Berger too. All left exposed. All fair game. And now, the Golden State Valkyries are ready to pounce. This isn't just about a misclick. This is a systemic failure. Stephanie White confirmed what fans already feared. The decisions made in that leak are real. Clark and Cunningham won't be returning. Not because of contract disputes. Not because of player preferences. But because the Fever front office willingly left them unprotected. That decision is not just controversial, it's indefensible. And the fallout has been brutal. Season ticket holders are furious. Social media is on fire. Fans who spent the last year emotionally and financially investing in the team are being told, in effect, thanks for the support, but we're starting over. No explanation, no warning, no real accountability. Even local reporters can't get straight answers. Instead, we're watching the league's newest franchise prepare for the biggest power grab in WNBA expansion history. The Valkyries didn't cause this mess, but they're more than ready to take advantage of it. Backed by tech investors and elite analytics teams, they were already planning to disrupt the league. What they didn't expect was to be handed 3 high-potential, unprotected players just days before the expansion draft. Now, they got leverage no one else does. And what's even more alarming, other teams are scrambling, not to catch up with the Valkyries, but to make sure this kind of catastrophe doesn't happen to them. League officials have already begun quiet outreach, checking in on each franchise's digital security protocols, content approval systems, and internal communication workflows. Because when your internal draft strategy ends up on the timeline before it's finalized, that's not just a bad look, it's a blueprint for disaster. Let's talk about what this does to morale. Sources say players around the league are rattled. No one feels secure. If Caitlin Clark can be left exposed without warning, what does that say to everyone else? This wasn't a phone call. This wasn't a negotiation. Players found out with the rest of us, via tweet. You'd think the league would have processes in place to prevent this. You'd think players would be given the dignity of hearing these decisions from their own teams. But no, they logged into social media and found out their name wasn't protected. And Caitlin Clark, the face of the WNBA's next chapter, was at the top of that list. There's no walking that back. Even if Indiana tries to spin it later, saying they hoped the Valkyries wouldn't take her or that there was a trade in the works, it's too late. The message has been sent, and players around the league heard it loud and clear. Loyalty is optional, and communication is an afterthought. What happens next could change everything. The Valkyries are expected to capitalize on the chaos immediately. Their camp has reportedly already initiated player discussions and are preparing formal offers the moment the expansion window opens. And you can bet they'll make it attractive. Golden State isn't just offering playing time. They're offering a fresh start, a city with a massive market, a franchise with deep financial backing, a locker room without the dysfunction. For Clark, who just endured one of the roughest rookie seasons in terms of on-court physicality and lack of protection, it could be a lifeline. And don't think Cunningham and Bergerer aren't watching closely. The Valkyries have the means to build an instant contender. And now, because of one team's mistake, they may end up with 3 foundational players before they've even played a game. Meanwhile, Indiana? They're stuck issuing vague statements and watching the fan base they worked so hard to build burned bridges overnight. It's hard to see how they recover from this. They're losing their core, their identity, and their credibility, all because someone hit post too early and exposed how little thought was actually going into protecting their future. And where's the league in all this? Silent. There's been no public statement from the WNBA, no reassurance to fans, no commitment to reviewing what went wrong. Just silence, while one of the league's most valuable franchises implodes from the inside. This isn't just an Indiana problem. It's a league-wide credibility problem. If teams can't be trusted to manage their rosters, if players can't be informed before the public, if social media interns have more access to player movement than the athletes themselves, then how is anyone supposed to buy into this system? Because the stakes have never been higher. With a new TV deal on the horizon, salary caps increasing, and international attention growing, the WNBA can't afford these kinds of missteps. The league is on the verge of something big, but if this is how expansion is being handled, that future is already at risk. And here's the thing about leaks. Once it's out, it's out. The damage is done. The Valkyries have their advantage. The fans have their disappointment. The players have their distrust. And the Fever? They have no one to blame but themselves. Drop a comment. Should the league intervene to stop the Valkyries from claiming Clark? Was this a strategic miscalculation or an outright betrayal? And can the WNBA survive if its biggest stars start walking out the door? Hit that subscribe button, because this isn't just a roster shakeup. It's a full-blown identity crisis. And the fallout? We're still in the early innings.